On this Rosh Hashanah morning, the Torah reading, Bereshit, about the creation of our world, invites us to first imagine where we have come from and who we might become. And it is in the spirit of new beginnings that I wanted to speak today about the meaning of Torah study. Now you are all well aware of everyone who achieved the amazing accomplishment of our Shabbat morning Torah learners, who as a group over more than 25 years have read Bereshit through 2 Chronicles. That's the last book of the Tanakh, if you didn't know. I'm not sure that I knew earlier. Torah, Nevi'im, Ketuvim, our prophets and our writings, our Hebrew Bible. And as soon as you ended, you started it all over again. In Leviticus, we come across one of the many covenantal promises of God. If you follow my statutes and observe my commandments and perform them, then God assures us blessings such as timely rain, a fruitful land, and safety as a demonstration of blessing for faith to God. And how many times did we challenge ourselves with that theology? But that's not what this sermon is about. This sermon is that Rashi, the great medieval commentator, picks up on this question of what does it mean to follow my statutes? And as this part of this covenantal exchange, Rashi concludes we are asked to toil in the study of Torah. Toil in Torah. Sounds strange, definitely a little heavy. After all, many of us think of Torah study as something inspiring or even joyful. We imagine Torah study as opening a page of Jewish wisdom and being filled with meaning and inspiration. So why then does Rashi choose the word toil about effort, struggle, and persistence? Well, the answer is, plenty of you know, times Torah that are not easy. But isn't this true of almost every part of life worth pursuing? Growth, whether in kindness, patience, or in our relationships, does not come without effort. Just as Torah asks us to lean in when things are confusing or frustrating, so too does life ask us to keep showing up for change when it feels slow or when we would rather give up. Rosh Hashanah reminds us that our deepest commitments, becoming more compassionate, more just, and more whole, require us to stretch beyond comfort. Toil, then, is not a burden. It is the very thing that transforms us. And so when we take the first steps of a journey, whether it's of study, of teshuvah, of a change of any kind, the emphasis must remain on process and effort, which refines the soul and deepens one's connection to God, rather than solely on the outcome or the amount of knowledge gained. In Torah specifically, there are many passages we do not understand, no matter how many times we read them. There are sections that feel boring, irrelevant, even antithetical or sometimes offensive to the ideas and theology we aspire to today. Or sometimes it's just the consuming responsibilities of daily life, of work, family, our health, that convinces us we simply don't have the time or energy to study. But it is precisely at those moments that Rashi's teaching becomes the most relevant. Toiling in Torah means not giving up. It means that when it's hard, we stay with it. When it feels dry, we keep digging until the sweetness begins to flow. And when life is hectic, we carve out, even if only for an hour on Shabbat morning, a sacred pocket of time to learn. And here is the deeper truth. In Judaism, the process matters just as much as the end result. It's not only about what we know at the end of our study, it's the journey of the study itself, the wrestling, the questioning, the refusing to give up that refines our souls. The struggle itself is holy because it shapes us into people who do not turn away from challenge, who do not turn away from responsibility, and who do not turn away from each other. And so at our siyum, when we concluded the study of Torah and we were celebrating this incredible accomplishment, I asked our learners what that difficult, sweet, joyful, and challenging journey through Torah has meant to them. And their answers sounded so similar to our sages that it was as if they too are sages in their own right. And I recorded them, if you remember. That was running. And now I want to share more broadly what our own PTBE scholars have shared about the toil of Torah. For some, studying Torah has been a revelation, like finally reading your own story from beginning to end. It's a powerful experience to trace thousands of years in history, understanding the highs and lows and recognizing that this complex narrative is, in essence, our story. This isn't just ancient text, it's a living book that shapes who we are and how we live, guiding our daily actions and our relationship with the divine. Many of us have discovered that Torah is far from a simple collection of happy stories where everything works out perfectly. Instead, it's a wonderfully messy narrative full of contradictions and often difficult truths. One student shared, "I'm still in the evolution of my relationship to this material. I started thinking about all the contradictions that are included in this work that is supposed to be the revelation of God, the revealing of God's own mind. And yet, all these contradictions. The author who put this book together had the courage or the interest to challenge us. And we have to deal with the inconsistencies because they are what make us think." So many of you, too, had a relationship to Torah because of its history. You have shared beyond the spiritual, Torah study has served as an incredible history lesson. We've explored the backdrop of significant events and realized that human motivations often remain constant across millennia. The arguments and challenges within the text resonate with today's world, strengthening our belief in the power of education. We learn from both the successes and failures depicted, finding leadership principles and insights into human error that remain relevant. Thus, this historical context makes the ancient text feel incredibly human and relatable. And almost everyone found meaning in the community created when studying Torah together. You've shared, perhaps one of the most cherished aspects of our Torah study is the vibrant community we've built. The group has become a vital subgroup, a family where we share deeply, support each other through losses and health journeys, and engage in both struggles, serious and joyful laughter. It's a space where we can be open, frank, and vulnerable, knowing we are among dear friends who understand and appreciate one another. The inclusivity of our group, welcoming all voices and perspectives, highlights how much richer Torah study becomes when everyone has something to add and contribute. And David, you shared, sorry to call you out, but voices on the recording were not that clear, but you were clear. This is a family. I have many dear friends in this world who I'm very close to, but there's no people in this world aside from my wife who I spend more time with than this group and share more with. You know that I can be open and frank and flawed and foolish and vulnerable. So to this group, I just want to say I love you all. Thank you for your generosity to me and for the opportunity to share of myself. And some members noted that the Shabbat practice of study became Shabbat. Every time we return to the words of Torah, we are practicing spiritual discipline. We are pushing back against apathy, against distraction, against the inertia that tells us to do nothing. We are training our hearts to stay awake. Therefore, studying is a cherished way to mark Shabbat, grounding the week with shared ideas and connections. And Ellen, you added that on Shabbat, we tend to do things on Friday nights, lighting candles, saying Kiddush, maybe coming to services. But by Saturday, we're off on our regular day and can almost forget it's Shabbat. So for you, Torah study is a way that you always start Shabbat and then go on to do the rest of your day. And as we all know, you walk to temple and walk home, and it's your sense of Shabbat happening each week. So many of you appreciated being on the journey of learning. The journey has been deeply personable, for many starting as an adult exploration or even a surprising connection to family legacies. It has taught us that we can wrestle with Torah, that our relationship with Judaism is an evolving one, and that we don't need to be religious enough or smart enough to participate. The experience has been consistently rich, deep, and meaningful, becoming a thread that ties our weeks together. It reminds us that Torah is the DNA of Western civilization, and by studying it together, we become partners in its ongoing revelation. You guys sound really smart. The Israeli author Amos Oz once said of the Jewish people, "Ours is not a bloodline, but a text line." Writer Sarah Horowitz understands this to mean that our texts are the one thing Jews have carried with us throughout our journeys, with each generation adding its own pages. Those words, I think, are our shared DNA. Being part of that story and continuing to tell it, that, I think, is what makes us Jews, she says. But finally, it is the open-ended interpretation of text that has captured the heart of so many who study. Our group shared, our collective experience shows that we don't have to choose between our people and our conscience. We can hold multiple truths, even when they don't align neatly, and still stand proud. As Jews, wrestling with our inheritance is a part of who we are. And the thing that has made the most difference to one learner is that there is not one answer. And she thinks that's really the strength of Judaism. I think this was Cindy. That no matter what the situation, there's lots of different ways to approach it and lots of different answers. There's not one answer. And to me, it's why Jews have thrived in every culture, because they look past the obvious and explore questions. We often say that Torah is a tree of life to those who hold fast, and all of its supporters are happy. But our reflections on Torah remind us that happiness may not be the goal. And nonetheless, holding fast to Torah offers profound meaning, connection to our history and tradition, and life-changing relationships for those who engage. In the same way, the High Holy Day season teaches that the toil of self-examination, the effort of repairing relationships, and the struggle to live more ethically is itself holy. We may never arrive at perfection. We may never find happiness, whatever that means. But just as one never finishes the study of Torah, we are changed by the very act of wrestling with ourselves. Every attempt to grow, however small, strengthens our spirit. Every effort to ask forgiveness, to repair harm, or to choose kindness reshapes our hearts. Rashi's teaching about Torah can be widened into a teaching for life itself. When it's hard, that's what matters most. When it's uncomfortable, that's when we are truly learning. When it takes toil, that's when we are on the path to holiness. It is a Christian minister named Rob Bell who wrote an article, "What is the Bible?" And in it, he affirms so much of what our own students uncovered about its study. He writes, "This is a book about a library of books dealing with loss and anger and transcendence and worry, and empire and money and fear and stress and joy and doubt and grace and healing. And who doesn't want to talk about all those? Abraham, we learn in Genesis, the first book of the Bible, left his father's household and everything familiar and set out on a journey to a new land. People didn't do that at that time in history because they had a cyclical view of history in which everything that has happened will happen again. They believe that you're born into a cycle of events and you'll die somewhere in that same cycle of events as the cycle endlessly repeats itself. In other words, there's nothing new. What happened to your ancestors will eventually happen to you, and then it will happen to your children as your family goes round and round the cycle. But then Abraham leaves. He steps out of the cycle. He walks into a new future, one that hasn't happened before. No one had ever done that before because no one had ever conceived of the world and life and the future like that before. This was a new idea in human history, that you weren't stuck, that you didn't have to repeat everything that has already happened. It's easy to read the Bible and miss an entire world of weirdness and joy and hope and innuendo and implication just below the surface. This is a dangerous, subversive, explicit, foul, honest, strange, contradictory, paradoxical, ruthlessly hopeful book that makes a number of rather stunning claims about pretty much everything. And it turns out that what they wrote about love and fear and debt and duty and doubt and anger and skepticism and hate and technology and shame and hope and betrayal, the very studies and issues we're still talking about thousands of years later, they're here. And that's why it's so important not to read it like it dropped out of the sky. Because in doing so, you miss the solidarity that comes from realizing this is a profoundly human book. If nothing else, Rosh Hashanah and our high holy days in general affirm we are nothing if not human. Our holiday themes honor our aspirations, our goals, and our relationships, but also the way we have fallen short in the world with a reminder that we can do better. But Abraham broke the cycle. Abraham left. And Rosh Hashanah is about beginning again. And when we begin again, we will realize that we are the same and totally different. And some things in the world will remain the same, like the commandment to study Torah, but we will be changed by it. So let's take this lesson of Rashi beyond the page. Toiling in Torah can be a model for our relationships and friendships, toiling to repair injustice, toiling to become more patient parents, kinder neighbors, more true versions of ourselves. Just as Torah study refines us, so too does every act of persistence in the service of goodness. Rosh Hashanah calls us to not only read the beginning of Torah, but to write new chapters with the ink of our lives. Because it is in those moments of effort we discover something profound. That Torah is not a book we study, it is a mirror in which we see ourselves. So may the same persistence we bring to our learning fuel the persistence we bring to our becoming. May we not give up on Torah, and may we not give up on ourselves. May this be a year in which we each find the courage to toil a little more deeply in learning, find patience to struggle with what is hard, and discover joy that comes from discovering new wisdom on the other side of that effort. It may not bring happiness, but it will certainly bring us and our world closer to wholeness and holiness. Shana Tova.